Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our channel Toxicology on Board. Through this channel, we will be able to learn some of the major concepts of toxicology. Through each video, we'll come across one questions. These questions were previously asked in toxicology exams. This channel will help you to prepare for various regulatory toxicology competitive exams through which you will be able to get international regulatory toxicology certifications like DABT, ERT, UK ERT, etc. So let us go directly to our first question. Question number one. Which of the following pairs of radionucleotides are of concern because they are metabolic analogues of calcium deposited in the bone and may cause skeletal neoplasia? The first option is uranium 238 and plutonium 238. Second option is uranium 226, radium 226 and strontium 90. Third option is cesium 137 and strontium 90. Fourth option is radon 222 and strontium 90. Option E is radon 222 and cesium 137. The right answer is option B, radium 226 and strontium 90. Let us understand why the option 2 is the right answer and why the other options are not appropriate for this particular question. So, if you look at radium 226, its atomic weight is 226 in the periodic table and atomic number is 88. Similarly, strontium atomic weight is 87.62 and atomic number is 38 in the periodic table. They specifically belongs to second group of elements in the case of periodic table, that is alkaline earth metals. So any individual who is exposed to these radioactive nucleotides, they are subjected to cause necrosis of the jaw, mastoid process. This is scientific medically called. It also causes skeletal neoplasia, as you can clearly see. This femur got neoplasia, and through this question, we will also be learning about radium 226, how it is affected. Uh, there is a famous historical case which is called radium dial painter case. We will be able to learn, discuss few things about these particular case study also, which almost took place in early 1920s. Why I am discussing this is there are few questions on this topic also in your board exam. And if you look at the periodic table, as I was saying earlier, both strontium and radium, we are correlating it with calcium. And if you look at the periodic table, this is the second group of elements: beryllium, magnesium, calcium, strontium, barium, radium. And your strontium and radium, here it is strontium and radium, they belong to the same class like calcium. So, what the question is metabolic analogues of calcium. So, they are nothing but. If you look at the other options, you can see clearly uranium, plutonium, they belong to lanthanide group of elements. Here it is given. And cesium and strontium, cesium belongs to first group of elements, and radon as well as the strontium, radon belongs to helium group of elements. So as you can see that any of these two options in two metals in the options are not belonging to the same group of elements. So like that you can clearly exclude the other options. You can directly consider wheel. But still let us understand more detail in concepts with related to strontium and radium. So let us first understand what is radioactivity. Radioactivity was first discovered by Madame Curie. She was a student of another scientist called Becquerel. So they have turned this activity called phenomena called radioactivity. And Madame Curie also discovers other radioactive elements like thorium, polonium, apart from radium. And she received Nobel Prize twice, one in physics as well as in chemistry. She died because of extensive work with these radioactive materials. She was diagnosed with aplastic anemia. And after once they understood the importance of radium and its glowing property or luminance property, they start apart from having naturally available these radioactive materials. This the human started making synthetically this one, and they almost believe because of luminescence property, they started believing that this radium has some magical healing properties. So they started using this radium in almost all products. Like if you can see on the right side, they started using in bread, in chocolate, as well as for the cosmetic purpose, for toothpaste. Okay, even for treating impotency also. because till then people did not know what are the toxic effects of these radioactive materials. Only because of blindly because of its luminescence property, they started incorporating this material in most all products. So let us first understand units of radiation activity and dose. Why? Because as a toxicology, one has to understand that everything, as Paracelsus said, dose makes the poison. So every type of chemical belonging to which particular class of category of usage, or they have them specific units. Okay, for example, pharmaceuticals, we have units in terms of mg per kg per day or mg per day. In the case of water bodies, solvents, we have mg per liter. Food product, dietary ppm. So like that, in the case of radioactivity, we have a separate term or units in order to measure the radioactivity. Because as a toxicology, if we know the dose at which it is causing radioactivity, we can establish some safety limits, and we will make sure that we do not get exposed to that above that limit. Beyond that limit, we will be able to use it for our daily for our beneficial usages. So let's understand what are the units of radioactivity, because there are some questions based on radioactivity also in your board exam. So the basic unit of radiation activity is becquerel. Okay, one also you have to keep in mind that radioactivity has two units. One is becquerel, another is curie. Okay, the oldest one was currently we are using becquerel as in which is named after the scientist Becquerel, and the definition is nothing but number of nuclear disintegrations per second. In a second, if you are exposed to one radioactive material, the number of disintegrations which occur in 1 second, that is called becquerel, or one unit of radiation activity. If you look at the older unit, which was named after the scientist Madame Curie, it is Curie, and it is given as Ci, which is number of disintegrations in 1 second from 1 gram of radium 226. So in our option also we have radium 226. So 1 curie is equal to so and so decays per second. Okay, and which is equivalent to 1 becquerel is so and so. So this is the radius. So few questions you will be getting on radioactivity also. Okay, based on half life, you will be asked to calculate the radioactivity in your questions. So let's see more about radium, since we have one option radium 226 in our question. So there are initially they identified 25 isotopes of radium, and four are important, that which occur naturally. Rest of the things they are man-made, synthetically there. Important one are 223, 224, 226, and 228, right? um, let's see radium 226, which is the most important one right now. Its half-life is around 1601 years, by far the most common natural form. Okay, and next one 228, it is having half life around 5.75 years. And if you look at the radium 223 and 224, which have fewer half life is very small. Okay, it is only few days, and hence these and one thing important thing that you need to remember is radium 228, it is a beta emitter, and all other three forms 223, 224, 226 are alpha emitters. Okay, the different isotopes have been used occupationally, as I said, because of its luminescent property. They have been using this one on watches as well as in instruments, as you can see here, 226 as well as 228. And for medicinal purpose, because of its shorter half-life, 223 and 224 are used, right? So we'll discuss about the case which were saying in the previous slide. So during 1920, there were a young woman who were working on this dial painters. Okay, they were using radium 226 as well as 228. So these are called radium girls. They were hired by this particular company, US Radium Corporation. So there the main purpose of these girls was to apply radium paint to this watch and clock faces so that they would glow in the dark. Okay, there is also a famous saying that during World War, that is during 1940s or 1930s, during Vietnam War, US soldiers, when they were working in the dark forest in the in the Vietnam jungle, they couldn't see the time, because pocket watches, which used to give you direction north and south, has been replaced with this wrist watches. So during dark in the jungle, because of the absence of light, they were not able to see the actual time. So these type of watches, they used to help them during the Vietnam War also. So what I mean to say is that during that time, these type of watches were more popular because of its luminescent property. Um, let's see. Many of them pointed the tips of the paint brushes by mouth. So, as a resulting ingestion of relatively large amounts of radium for some of the women. Okay, they were instructed use their lips to shape the brushes. So, what happens is to these paint brushes? Eventually, they become dry. In order to make them pointed, again, these women used to lick them with in their mouth to make it sharp. So, by 1920, over 50 women died due to radium paint poisoning, and many of the survivors suffered significant health problems. So, you can here clearly see in the picture, she is one woman who is putting the brush into her mouth, and this brush also contains radium 226. So at that time they didn't know that this radium 226 had so many toxic properties. See here you can see very clearly these are the workstations. Here in these bottles you can see radium are there. These are the watches. So they are trying to number this through this radium paint. Let's now understand this our second option, strontium. So as you can see, and it was given in the question, metabolic analogs of calcium. So bone as a storage depot. Okay, so we have many tissues in our body. Once you are exposed to any chemical, they might go and deposit in your muscle, in your fat, or insert. They might be concentrated in a certain organ. Okay, so bone is also one other thing which is called a storage depot, particularly these elements, fluoride, lead, as well as strontium. But our focus will be in this video more towards strontium. May be incorporated and stored in the bone matrix. So we have one picture with respect to bone matrix also we'll discuss in detail. So for example, 90% of the lead in the body is eventually found in the skeleton. Okay. Well, skeletal uptake of xenobiotics is essentially a surface chemistry phenomenon with exchange taking place between the bone surface and the fluid in contact with it. So you have to understand in between the joints also we have some liquid that we'll discuss. Fluid is there in order for the sake of friction that we'll discuss in detail. The fluid is nothing but your extracellular fluid. And the surface is that hydroxyapatite crystals of the bone material. Many of those crystals are very small, resulting in large surface area relative to the mass of the bone. So one has to understand that as the size decreases, surface area increases, right? The extracellular fluid brings the toxicant into contact with the hydration shell of the hydroxyapatite, allowing diffusion through it and penetration of the crystal surface. As a result, similarities in the size and charge, fluoride may readily replace OH in the hydroxyapatite crystals, whereas lead or strontium may substitute for calcium. So this is our answer here. So a metabolic analog of strontium. So calcium gets replaced in the bone with strontium, right? In the hydroxyapatite lattice matrix through an exchange adsorption reaction, right? Foreign compounds deposited on the bone are not sequestered irreversibly by the tissue. Toxicants can be released from the bone by ionic exchange at the crystal surface and dissolution of the bone crystal through osteoclastic activity. An increase in the osteoclastic activity, such as seen after parathyroid hormone administration, leads to enhanced mobilization of hydroxyapatite lattice, which can be reflected in an increased plasma concentration of toxicants. Ultimately, deposition and storage of toxicants in bone may or may not be detrimental, right? Lead is not toxic to bone, but the chronic effects of fluoride deposition, which causes skeletal fluorosis, and radioactive strontium, osteosarcoma, and other So, in our question, we have skeletal neoplasia, so osteosarcoma and the other neoplasia. So, this is a typical bone structure you can see. We're discussing about compact, and this is the extracellular fluid will be there. These are the blood vessels, right? And we are discussing about this hydroxyapatite crystals because of the small size. Here we have seen most of the crystal very small, large surface area. Okay, contrast. So this is the thing that important thing you have to understand is radioactive strontium we're discussing taken up by the bone as if it were the calcium. So body is not able to differentiate between strontium and calcium. Instead of calcium, bones will take up strontium 19. This leads to cancer of the bone and bone marrow. Right here you can see the typical structure. So I hope we are able to understand the reasons why strontium and radium were important. Radioactivity is another very important chapter in the case when you are preparing for toxicology. There are definitely 2 to 3 questions you will get about radioactivity in your exam. So all the best for your exam. Be curious. So thank you for listening to the video and be curious. For any questions, please comment and subscribe my YouTube channel, Toxicology One. Thank you once again.